Life doesn't come with a handbook, and no one should have to face it alone. That's where Courageous Minds Counseling steps in. Based in the Des Moines Metro, this group practice provides culturally responsive, trauma-informed therapy for children, adolescents, adults, couples, and families. Their team of highly trained and compassionate therapists understands that every person's journey is unique, whether through eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing therapy, play therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, mindfulness, or traditional talk therapy. They design treatment plans that meet clients where they are and guide them through where they want to be. From overcoming trauma and anxiety to navigating relationships, transitions, or self-discovery, Courageous Minds Counseling creates a safe space to heal, grow, and thrive. Because healing isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and everyone deserves a chance to be heard, supported, and empowered. Call 515-601-2890 or visit courageousmindscounseling.com to schedule your appointment today. When courageous minds speak, oh, the possibilities. Welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast, where we celebrate and elevate the voices of Black women living and thriving in the state of Iowa. I'm your host, Emili, and today's guest is the definition of purpose, power, and public service. Monique Scarlett was born and raised in Sioux City, Iowa, and has spent her life building bridges, advocating for justice, and leading with faith and community at the center of everything she does. She is the founder and president of Unity in Community, an organization committed to building peace between citizens and law enforcement. She also serves as president of the Sioux City chapter of the NAACP, where she continues to fight for equity, representation, and change. Monique's leadership spans far beyond titles. She served as a school board director, a member of Iowa Governor's Justice Advisory Board, the Sioux City Human Rights Commission, and the Woodbury County At-Risk Youth Commission. She's an evangelist, a mentor, a community organizer, and a woman of vision, and the recipient of numerous awards, including the Woman of Excellence Award, the Fearless Woman of Iowa Award, and the City of Sioux City's official Day of Unity proclamation. In today's conversation, we'll reflect on her experience growing up in Iowa, the power of civic engagement, and the rich history of Black Iowans living and building community in Sioux City. I'm so honored to share space with a woman who reminds us that a vision with execution changes lives. So, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, I'd like to welcome Monique Scarlett to the show. Monique, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you reached out and was telling me about, the history of Black folks living in Sioux City, I had to kind of take a minute. I've actually never been to Sioux City. I think in high school, we had a track meet up there at some point, but I think we got snowed out, so we didn't go. But so Sioux City, for those of you guys listening that don't know, Sioux City is in the northwest corner of the state. It's actually one of the bigger cities, but it actually has, in comparison to like Des Moines or Iowa City or Cedar Rapids, a lower population of Black Iowans. So, Monique, to start this question, can you just kind of talk a little bit about growing up in Sioux City, what brought your family there, and maybe just touching a little bit on some of your experiences growing up in the northwest corner of the state?
Sure, absolutely. Well, definitely born and raised here in Sioux City, Iowa, a child of the 60s and so at that time, I mean, Sioux City was just one of those village cities. Everyone knew everyone, and if you got in trouble, you would get disciplined on your way home, only to be
Mhm.
disciplined again.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a village. My mother worked twice as hard to make sure that the family was provided for. She was involved in civic activities, marches, things like that. So it was really not difficult growing up in Sioux City. However, I was able to identify some discrimination at a very early age and recognize that, yeah, it seems like I'm not as good as that person.
Mhm.
And so it made me aware and alert at a very early age.
Here in Des Moines, I grew up on the South Side, and so at the time, so the South Side of Des Moines was predominantly white. I was the only Black kid in my class, I think 1st through 5th grade for the most part. So, when you talk about your experience, what was it like for you to learn those things early on and then also navigate those dynamics of potentially being the only one or two, or people don't think I'm as smart or I'm as good as, a white student or a boy student and things like that? How did you navigate that at a young age?
In elementary, actually, it was the time of when the movie Roots came out by Alex
Okay.
Haley. So I remember watching that and going to school and, it was called The N-word after that movie, it came out. And so it was one of those that I was the only Black person in my classroom. We only had a handful of Black kids at the school that I attended in Sioux City, which at that time was called Smith Villa. It's now
Mm,
called Liberty Elementary. And so, you're trying to figure out how to work with this. And so the first couple of times I let it slide, and then another young lady came up to me and called me the N-word, and it was fisticuffs after that.
at that part.
Yes, yes, so I had had enough, and at that time, your principal could paddle you or send you home, and so I was sent home, and,
Mm,
I explained to my mother, the times prior that it had been said and how I was treated, and even, some teachers that would, I believe, intentionally mispronounce my name. When they knew it
mm,
was Monique, they would call me Monic
mm,
or Monicue, and
mm,
I would correct them respectfully, but they would continue to do it. So,
mhm.
at that time, I didn't identify, but now I do identify it was intentional,
Yep.
and so those were some of the obstacles and challenges that I had. Learning how to challenge or channel that anger into a
Mm.
positive way didn't come until later in life.
Yeah, with only a small Black population in Sioux City, one of the things that I'd like to talk about and ask people is about the sense of community. So, with the Black population in Sioux City when you were young, how did you build community? How did you find each other? And how did you support one another knowing that you were limited in numbers?
Yes, we actually supported one another mostly on what we call the west side of Sioux City.
Mhm,
And so we families knew families, and so kids were raised together. And we either attended different programs like the boys' club my brother went to. There wasn't a girls' club at that time, but there was
mhm,
Sanford Community Center.
mhm,
And that was one of the only centers that allowed Black children or Native American children to attend.
mhm,
And so that's how we came together and stuck together.
mhm,
So if there were activities in the city, such as our Rivercade, we would all get together. What time do we want to go? Because we all
mhm,
stayed in a pack,
mhm,
to keep each other safe, but at the same time have a lot of fun with each other.
mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
how we built that relationship, that bond.
Yeah, and so and I find it interesting that you said so I'm assuming that this was when you were younger, so in the 70s, and that community center was the only one that allowed Black students or Black kids and Native American kids. I really think that that's an interesting point because technically desegregation happened in the 50s.
Absolutely. It
Mhm.
happened in the
Yep.
'50s,
Yeah.
and we were still facing that. I mean, even in community or public pools, swimming pools, we
Mhm.
had to walk from the west side of Sioux City all the way to Riverside, which
Mhm.
is easily probably 2, 3 miles
Mhm.
just to swim
Wow.
until they built a public, pool on the west side, Cook Park or Cook Pool, which now
Mhm.
they torn down and tearing down the park, and so, again, lost something that we could call our own.
Mhm.
So, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we still faced a lot of challenges.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Did you feel like in a way as everything is happening around you. So everything from, the civil rights movement and all of these just different events in our culture here as Black Americans, did you feel like Sioux City was kind of isolated or forgotten about?
Yes. Honestly, now my mother would share stories with me. She was heavily involved in the NAACP and civil rights movement. But Sioux City was a place, it was unique because we are known for some historical facts. However, everyone was concentrated on Des Moines or
Mm,
Davenport
mhm,
or all eastern Iowa. So we
mhm,
were kind of by ourselves, fending for ourselves, fighting for ourselves, and
mhm.
and making things happen here on the western Iowa.
One of the things you mentioned in your email to me was about the rich history of Black history in Sioux City, which is, again, something I did not know about. So, do you want to kind of touch a little bit on, through your research and through your lived experience, what are some stories or individuals that stand out to you about Sioux City and some of these historical figures?
Sure. Actually, Black history in Sioux City is being researched as I speak.
Mm,
Literally, we have a published author, if I could just kind of give him a shout out.
mm,
This is African American history. This is his volume one, and it talks about Sioux City history.
mhm,
He is now working, his name is Jim Tillman.
mhm,
He is now working on volume 3, and
mhm.
he has researched and uncovered things that I never knew. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know if my grandparents knew, but, he's really digging deep, and so there's a lot of rich history from, first Black teachers, first Black
Mhm,
police officer, it's just phenomenal. First Black, baseball softball team, the Sioux
mhm,
City Ghosts, so there's a lot of history in Sioux City that I think over the years was just not known, but
mhm,
now is known, and so there's a rich history. You know, I just look at myself now and, what will people think when I die? What kind of history, what kind of legacy or something that I would leave? And I hope people would just know that, I've always tried to be a change agent,
mhm.
make things happen. So I would just definitely recommend, suggest everyone Google Sioux City
Yeah.
and see, I mean, Al Capone was here. There
Yep.
a
I
lot of
saw
rich
that.
history. Yeah, South
Yeah.
Bottoms was just a huge melting pot,
Mhm,
and, some of that history there, my great-grandmother, when the flood came in and back in the 40s and wiped out all of the homes down in the South Bottoms, my great-grandmother was offered $1 to relocate to the west side of Sioux City.
it's $1.
$1.
Wow. 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 Yeah, and I think I looked up Mr. Tillman's lexicon of work, and so that's definitely something that even I wanna dive into. It's so funny because I feel like, with me growing up in Des Moines, I've always kind of felt like Des Moines is kind of the epicenter, and it's funny because even when I used to travel for work and I used to go all over Iowa, and I would see other Black people in, small towns, like, outside of, like, Council Bluffs or, Charles City is another one, and I'm just like, what are you doing here? How'd you get here? But not really understanding even that there is a certain level of history. And I always feel like every time I've, traveled outside of the state, I've lived outside of the state, there's always been the question there are Black people in Iowa. I'm even sometimes ignorant to the fact that there are Black people in other parts of Iowa. So I'm really interested in getting into those books and also learning more about our history in the state. And I think that for you being a change agent, just reading through your profile and your TED Talk was also amazing that you did a couple years ago. So I'll make sure that I link that for everyone to look at. But I feel like with all of these great things, I said it multiple times on this podcast, Black women are rarely asked to do anything. We just do when we see that there is a need. You, Monique, have served on a school board, you've served with the Human Rights Commission, youth commissions. Can you talk a little bit about what has inspired you into stepping into these roles, including even learning and sharing about the history of your hometown?
Sh I seen the need. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I seen the need. I seen that our city government leadership did not reflect our community, and I was just kinda exhausted of attending meetings, speaking, and nothing changing.
Mhm.
And so I said, I just gotta get in there. Running for school board was something that one of the leaders who had passed recently had approached me and said, "I think you need to run for school board." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't want to run for school board."
Mhm.
And because you have this sense of, oh, if you run for school board, you have to have this degree, you have to doctor so and so. And no, you just have to be a person that cares for the students, the
Yeah.
educators in your city. And
Mhm.
so that's what I ran on, just grassroots. And it was a challenging time because we faced COVID. So we went virtual classrooms. And so we had changes of superintendents. I mean, you name it, we went through it in those four
Mhm.
years. So I was just a person that I said, you know what? I have to get in here and make some things happen, open up avenues and doors for someone else in the future,
Mhm.
be able to hand off the torch. And so that's I just got tired of attending meetings, saying my little 2, 3 minute spiel, and nothing was moving or shaking.
Mhm.
So being in leadership now has helped me collaborate and network with
Mhm.
people and get those connections that I need and get the ears
Mhm.
that I need.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like too, when you step into those roles and you take the initiative, you start to kind of realize that the problems that you see, other people also recognize, but there are also problems that you didn't even know were there. And so I can understand how that could kind of get overwhelming. So, as someone that has served in so many different roles and you are so close to your community, how do you stay grounded in those moments and what keeps
Mhm.
you energized to keep going?
Wow. First, how I stay grounded is spiritually. I
Mm,
have to address that.
mhm,
Prayer every day
yeah.
before I get out of bed and while I'm getting dressed on my way to wherever I'm going. So that's the foundation is my spiritual walk with God.
Mhm,
And so when those heated moments arise, do I always maybe I might get heated too sometimes.
mhm,
But if an apology is necessary, I'm woman enough to do that. If correction is necessary, I'm woman enough to accept that. But that's the foundation. But the focus is just, having equality and being able to help those that feel like they don't have any help.
mhm,
And so that's what keeps me rooted and grounded of, that vision of, just saying, hey, something's got to give, something's got to change. I want a better future for my community. My
mhm,
grandchildren will be most likely raised here, some of them.
mhm,
But, the next Black person or Black woman specifically that
mhm,
comes along, I want to make it a little bit easier
mhm,
for that next individual so that they can say, wow, okay, I'm on this
mhm,
path now. And I didn't have to do what they had to do,
mhm,
And so education is key, obviously, but involvement. I mean, you just have to be involved,
mhm,
finding out what's going on in your city, looking at the policies and laws and being able to govern yourself accordingly, but also challenging those
mhm,
policies, So
mhm.
we see it happening at the highest level.
Yeah.
So if it happens there, then we can challenge right back. We have to fight back, especially
Yeah.
Black women, because we're doing everything. We're out in the community. We're holding down jobs. We're being mothers, grandmothers. I mean, you name it, we're doing it. How do we
Mhm.
find the energy and strength? Only God.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something that is incredibly profound as someone that always had a connection with a higher power, but I really didn't start living into it and start understanding it and letting that relationship grow and mold until I got divorced. And so now, kind of like what I said earlier, black women are very rarely often asked to do something. We just do it, right? And so with this podcast, with a few other things that I'm currently working on, it was never an ask, but it was almost like I'm feeling compelled to put my expertise towards something, to get more understanding, to ask the right questions and really put myself out there. And so the next thing I really wanted to ask you about is unity and community. So this is an organization that you founded. And what I really love about this is that it is bridging a gap, or excuse me, it is recreating and rebuilding a burned bridge between citizens and law enforcement. I think that the foundation is there.
Yes.
There is still a lot of work to do. We are still seeing the violation of Black and brown bodies by law enforcement across the country. But for you specifically, doing this organization in Sioux City. Can you talk a little bit about why it was important to create this and to start building and sustaining that foundation?
Sure, I want it to be proactive instead of reactive.
Hmm.
And that's what I was seeing. We've been fighting this fight, as you said, for generations
Yeah.
with our young Black men and Black women now and
Hmm.
children being a target. And so I said, in my community, because I thought about my own son, who he doesn't live in Sioux City anymore, but he's, fulfilling his dreams.
Hmm.
But I just thought at that time in 2016, I says, this could be my son. And what in the world would I do? You feel the hurt for those parents that are going through that, but it's nothing like when you experience something yourself. And
Hmm.
so I said, you know what? We can't have this happen in our community. So I just began to pray and, oh, okay, God, what do I do next? Obviously there's a need, but how do I go forward? And so the first thing I did was actually contacted at that time the chief of police.
Oh, okay.
And I said, let's have a conversation about what's happening nationwide and how this is going to eventually trickle down in our community if we don't have something in place to prevent it.
Hmm.
And so we talked. I spoke with the council members. I spoke with our human rights director, and people were on board. And
Hmm.
then I spoke with a couple of leaders in our city, our Black influential leaders, and they got right behind me 100%. Now, everyone, and this is important to know about our Black community, everyone wasn't pro this movement
Hmm.
because then they begin to say, I'm a sellout. Oh, now you want to work with them instead
Hmm.
of helping me. And it's like, no, yes, I want to work with them. I
Hmm.
want us to work together in
Hmm.
unity as a community to prevent this happening in Sioux City. And
Right.
the only way to do that is sit down and have some very candid, courageous conversations and then implement educational forums. And then once we get moving, then we can celebrate with an annual block party,
Hmm.
watch our community come together and
Hmm.
embrace one another without being afraid of one another or
Hmm.
hesitant. And I think, Emily, since 2016, and now we're in our ninth year, I have watched the involvement happen.
Hmm.
And has it always been smooth? No.
Hmm.
The new chief, he's been in position a few years now, Chief Rex Mueller, and I have to give him a shout out
Hmm.
because he is a rare jewel as a chief of police, and he listens. He has an open door. He
Hmm.
allows people to come in and talk with him and share their concerns. Not only does he listen, he implements.
Hmm.
He definitely responds to that. And Sioux City's community policing is phenomenal. Is top
Hmm.
notch. I would put it up against any city in our nation for
Hmm.
them to look at Sioux City and what we're doing to prevent these catastrophes from happening, because no one wants to get that phone call that your
Hmm.
child has been shot
Right.
by a police officer.
Hmm.
And opposite, no one wants to get that phone call your husband or your son has been shot in
Hmm.
a fight from, and you're the officer, the family of the officer. So, unity in the community, yes, we're definitely rebuilding bridges. And I will say in Sioux City, I don't think there was really bridges before this organization
Hmm.
was founded. I know that there was just a lot of fighting and
Hmm.
us versus them type of
Hmm.
mentality. So I think people welcomed this. And like I said, it isn't always easy. Nothing is,
Hmm.
you know,
Right.
but you got to learn to sit down and work through it,
Hmm.
and voice your concerns. But I always tell people, don't always be a commentator and a spectator, be a participator.
Right.
If you have an idea you think would be better, come and talk with us.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I have a board of 7 people, and
Hmm.
it's, civilians, it's police officers, I mean, we have a little bit of every people in
Hmm.
law, just everyday parents, so
Hmm.
it works. It's working.
Yeah, and I think I want to go back to something that you said in that, there was that idea that if you start to build this foundation, if you start to build this bridge, you're a sellout. How I see this is that when you build the foundation and you build the bridge and you are starting to meet on common ground, I feel like it gives you and it gives your community a better opportunity to hold people accountable when they go back on the agreements on the things that they agreed to. Right? So, has there been kind of that foundational level of accountability set? And do you feel like the local police department is truly living into the things that you guys are talking about? I mean, obviously they have been. You guys, I mean, you've only your organization has been around for 9 years now. Can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about the accountability piece and kind of how maybe some of those discussions go about?
Absolutely. One of the biggest accomplishments through this is working hand in hand with our local NAACP, and
Mhm.
we implemented the video camera. Our officers in Sioux City did not have those 9 years ago, but through
Okay.
collaborations, that's a piece of accountability that
Yeah.
came to fruition. And
Mhm.
so when things happen, and we've sat down, things happen, they'll contact me, or the families will contact me. I get it from both sides. I wasn't treated fairly, my son wasn't treated fairly, or the police department say, hey, we got this going on. We
Mhm.
need for you and some board members to come in. We sit down and we review
Mhm.
those cameras. And then
Mm.
we have some tough conversations.
Mhm.
And we have not agreed in everything, and we have requested some disciplinary action to
Mhm.
take place, but we've went a step further and we said not only disciplinary action, but let's come in there and do an education. Let's do a class
Mhm.
with these officers. And the police department has been very open to that. And then they have educated us in the town halls of their goals and what they would like to see the city, and then they hold us accountable.
Mhm.
So it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. We have standards that we
Mhm.
have put in place, and we will call each other on it. Hey,
Mhm.
this is what you said we would do. This is our mission statement. Let's do it.
Mhm.
Let's
Yeah,
find a way.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so in my next question to you then is just about what the community engagement is now. And with again, I think with building this bridge and building that foundation, you're building trust, you're holding people accountable. But I can see how this can bring a community together, and also have some more common ground and understanding between, you know, Black people, Latino Americans, Native Americans, and, your white population. Cause I do know that, white people are the majority in Sioux
Yes.
City. So, what does the overall community feel like now that unity and community is there, that you're building these foundations? And are you seeing a difference in the community as you guys are kind of reworking everything and trying to build more cohesiveness?
I have seen a difference. I have gotten calls, and that's one of the ways we got the Day of Unity proclamation.
Mhm,
Our city council was very pleased of the outcome and ongoing process and things that we're implementing. And so I see great progress. I see growth. We are not stagnant by any means. I mean, it's
mhm,
every day something could happen, or maybe 2 or 3 days we don't get a call. But the biggest piece is just making sure that we're always growing. If we're not growing, when we stop listening, then it becomes quiet. And that means
right.
people no longer care. And I just recently made that statement at a city council meeting. And
Mhm,
we have to be very careful that when you stop getting those calls
mhm,
and people stop showing up at meetings, you're
mhm,
in a dangerous place,
mhm,
meaning that people now have stopped caring. Sioux City still cares. The people definitely still care. I just think people, for some reason, are a little bit more hesitant in how they navigate.
mhm,
And that comes from the presidential administration dismantling and removing, and this ugly spirit of segregating again that has
mhm,
rooted its head. And so people are very careful or fearful how they navigate.
mhm,
And I will say this has been my focus since the election. Okay.
mm.
And
Yeah.
as I am going to say this, it's not about the party. but it is about the people.
Yes.
And there's only one way to move now, and that's forward.
Mhm.
I'm not going backwards as a
Mm.
Black woman. I refuse to go backwards
Right.
as a Black woman.
Mhm.
And you talking about fighting intellectually, mentally, spiritually,
Yeah.
I am doing that because I refuse to have any of my ancestors' bloodshed be in vain.
Mm.
And I will continue to talk about the history, the true history, even
Mhm.
though they're trying to erase it.
Mhm.
I'm going to continue to talk about it because it gives us that accountability to make sure we don't go there again, in which I see some things trying to go there again.
Right.
And I can't allow that. I
Yeah.
just cannot allow that for the future generations.
Mhm.
So I think there's different ways to fight that in Sioux City,
Mhm.
and so we just have to be able to gather the people, gather
Mhm.
them, the crowds, not only in marches, but let's get in these offices. Let's
Yeah.
attend these town halls. Let's get in the city council meetings. Let's get in the school board meetings
Mhm.
and say, "Hey, I expect as a banker, I've been in banking 26 years and I
Mhm.
managed forever at Bank of America and I'm at US Bank now. But
Mhm.
my expectation as a bank manager when I sat down with an employee was to give them an action plan. Not
Mm.
only did I tell them the wahoos, great jobs in their performance, we talked about behavior, but we
Mhm.
talked about an action plan and a time frame to improve what they wasn't measuring up to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part sometimes as Black people, Black folks, is we tell them what we don't like, or we give them the pat on the black back, but we don't give them a time frame to
Mhm.
improve what they're not measuring up to, does not
Mhm.
meet.
Right.
And that's the action plan. I think that's a solid action plan. So when we say, hey, let's go until July, I expect this to happen.
Yeah.
And when July comes, you make sure we get back in there and say, great
What
job.
happened?
Yeah,
Yep.
you did it. Or, hey, you dropped the ball. Tell me what
Right.
happened.
Right. Right. And I think too, it's something that I realized in my professional career a long time ago. I remember when I used to work in insurance before I moved over to higher ed. And my supervisors, I would get on their nerves because I was always asking for feedback. And I always wanted to create an action plan and, to get better and to do better.
Mhm.
And at the same time, though, I would always say, for everything you are going to hold me accountable for, I'm holding you accountable to make sure that I stay on track because that is your job as my supervisor. Right. And so I think that when we ask for things and when we make a plan, I feel like we need to be more empowering of ourselves to hold people accountable for also going on the journey with us, just like what you said. And I think that that's something that I feel like is kind of starting to happen, and it's actually been happening. I feel like the moment that I know for myself that I just started to be unapologetically me,
There you
I
go.
stopped feeling like I was having to walk alone. And so, even when I moved into higher ed and, Emily, how's your action plan going? It's going great, but you haven't done these 4 things and I can't move forward without your approval. So let's get it going. Right.
Yes.
And that's where that assertiveness comes from. And I feel like we are all very capable of that. And I think that everything that you just said is just such great advice to young Black women here in the state that might feel unseen, might feel unheard. It's to really step out, do what you think is right, but also hold people accountable if they say that they want to be a part and they want to also do. So I think that that's great. And then I wanted to ask you one more thing before we go into our next part of the show and then wrap up here is I noted that one of your favorite quotes is from Thomas Edison. And I love this. And I've heard so many different iterations of it. And I think I even tried to quote it on a podcast and I was like, I can't get this right. But the quote is a vision without execution is
Yeah.
just another hallucination.
Yes.
And what I have always said to people is, and it's from one of my favorite TV shows, The Office, but it just resonates so much in that there's always a million reasons not to do something.
Mhm.
But there's usually only one that will definitely kind of get your butt in gear. So when you think about that quote, how has that guided your journey in banking, in community service, and running for the school board and civic engagement? Talk to me a little bit about why that quote means so much and how it's led you on this path.
Absolutely. I'm going to go old school on you.
Okay.
Okay. This is a quote also, but this defines it. Putting my mouth where my money is. Okay.
And that's as simple as that.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. And so, again, it goes back. I could talk all day long
Mhm,
about what I don't like and complain about it. But until I get out there and do something about it,
mhm,
then, every person, especially Black women, we have to say, is my living in vain?
mhm,
No. Clark Sisters, very a popular song in the 80s.
mhm,
Is my living in vain? No, of course not. It's not in vain because
mhm,
everything we do has a purpose. Every day we live as Black women, we plant seeds,
mm,
whether we know it or not. Because this is what I say. If I was downtown and seen you, Emily, and didn't know who you were, and I'm famous for this, my son thinks it's hilarious, but I can see a total stranger
mhm,
look at you as a Black woman and smile and say, have a good day.
mm,
I don't know what you're going through per se, but
mhm.
I know how it feels to be a Black woman.
Yes.
So any little seed helps. It doesn't have to be, taking you on this big luxurious trip or whatever. It's
Mhm,
just that simple, have a good day. That's just saying to you, be encouraged, my sister. It's going to be all right. That's
mhm.
what I want to say to the future generation. Be encouraged.
Yeah.
And keep going. Don't let, man, these barks seem to be a bite. I love dogs. Okay.
Mhm.
Just started appreciating cats only because my son has cats. But I'm a dog person.
Mhm,
And, I had a Rottweiler. Her name was Fifi. She
mhm,
was a Rottweiler. People
mhm.
would come to my house and I would say, oh, let me put Fifi up. And they say, oh, Fifi. No, you don't have to put her up. And I said, okay, Fifi, come on out. And
It's
then
just a
they
big
see
old
this
dog.
big old Rottweiler, right? And they're all scared because they think that
Uh-huh.
she's supposed to be a small animal. But I've learned that dogs bark a lot, but they rarely bite. They only bite when they
Mm,
feel endangered or if
right.
they've been trained to attack. But otherwise, they just bark.
Mhm,
So that's what we got. Take those barks, let them bark, keep moving,
mhm,
you know? And sometimes if they bite, you can bite them back.
mhm.
People will say, how can you
Yeah.
say that? People say, well, what have people throw lemons at you? Throw them back. We
Mhm.
don't always have to make lemonade, people. We don't.
Yep. That's
Sometimes
right.
we could take those lemons and throw them back. We don't have
Mhm.
to settle for less.
Yes. 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 That's phenomenal. It and especially when, like, for example, our legislature just passed that bill that says, state funding can no longer go towards any type of DEI support, office employee, or anything like that. And I really think that, you know, that's a lemon. We don't have to take it. And so there's been a call to action to start blowing up those state representatives that voted for that, blow their phones up.
Yes. And that's when you have to.
Start holding them accountable for what they just did and how they are now setting our state back. That's a lemon that we don't have to accept. And I think that as we move forward with hopefully getting a new governor, with hopefully having new state representation and legislation, we can throw those lemon backs. Those we can throw those bad lemons back to get new ones to make even sweeter lemonade. That's fantastic. That's a great analogy. That's a good
Absolutely.
one.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
good one.
And with those cutbacks, as the president of the local chapter of the NAACP, we just celebrated our high school seniors.
Mhm.
And because of those type of cutbacks, we're always in partnership with our Sioux City Community School District. Well,
Mhm.
this year their hands were tied.
Mm.
They could no longer help us as they could do in the past.
Mhm.
And so it was very challenging to
Mhm.
first of all, you got to know the names of the students, right? How do we
Yeah.
get that information? And then you have to go out and try to contact them. Long story short, I said, guys, again, we got to move forward. So
Mhm.
we did what we had to do in order to make sure we honored our
Mhm.
Black students. So they came in as a prince and a princess, and we crowned them with our NAACP medal over their head
Mm.
and
Hmm.
bless them as the future kings and queens,
I love that.
empowering them. So don't let these setbacks set us back. Let us come back with these
Hmm.
setbacks.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's amazing. So, this is something new, actually, that I am
Okay.
doing on the show because these are just such great conversations. But I also want to make sure that there's just a little personal added touch for each guest. So we are going to go through a lightning round. So
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a either or question, or pose something to you as either or. You'll answer, and then we'll go ahead and move on. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
All right. So Monique, are you a morning person or a night owl?
Wow. Probably a night owl.
A night owl?
Yeah.
Okay, same.
Yeah.
A book or sermon that changed your life?
A sermon changed my life. The sermon that changed my life was my pastor, previous pastor, Pastor Floyd Brown, had a sermon. He said, "Some were called and sent, some wanted and went." That changed my life.
That's amazing. That's a lot to think about.
Ooh, it's deep.
That one's deep. That one's deep. All right, your favorite Iowa tradition?
My favorite Iowa tradition is probably the Iowa State Fair.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. A
And
little bit of everything.
for someone from Northwest Iowa, to me, that's shocking to hear because I feel like unless you are in Central Iowa, I hear more people that are not from Central Iowa. Well, I've never even been to the fair. And I'm like, how? How is that possible?
Yeah, yeah. Well, my son's godparents lived there, and so in Des Moines, and yeah, we used to come just about every year and go there with them. That's how I
Hmm.
was exposed to it,
Yeah.
and it
Okay.
was great.
Okay. One word to describe your journey so far.
Perseverance,
Hmm.
perseverance.
Okay. Okay.
Tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. You got to go through the dramatics, and you
Yes.
still have to press.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And last but not least, what brings you joy right now?
Mm. What brings me joy would be right now being what I just encountered,
Mhm.
having a stroke
Mm.
is life,
Mm.
being alive
Mhm.
and appreciating it more
Mhm.
and looking at things more clear.
Yeah. Yes. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Well, Monique, this was such a great conversation, and I want to make sure that people know where to find you. So, at this point in the show, I want to go ahead and roll out the red carpet, let people know where they can find you, and also how they can support unity in the community.
You can actually Google my name, Monique Scarlett, and it pretty much gives you everything that I'm doing or have done. But you can find Unity in the community on Facebook at
Hmm.
Unity Community Sioux City at Facebook. You can go to our Sioux City NAACP website
Hmm.
and you will find some information there. As Emily said earlier, you can look up TEDx, Monique Scarlett, and find how to be and tap into the power of one. And so you can go to the Sioux City Community School District, type in Monique Scarlett, you will see some of the blessings and the burdens of
Mm.
being a school board director. So those are ways you can find me, or you can just simply give me a call. My number is public on those sites. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Well, and you guys don't worry, I will have all of that information linked to you in the show notes. Monique, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your faith, and your deep commitment to justice in the community. Your journey is a powerful reminder of what it means to lead with both heart and action, and I'm honored to have had this conversation with you. To everyone listening, let Monique's story encourage you to get involved, speak up, and be a part of building a better Iowa. Whether you are mentoring, organizing, or simply showing up for your community, you are making an impact. So, for everyone else also listening, you can listen to Black Girl Iowa podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and YouTube. If you want merch, you can go to my Etsy shop, which is called Black Girl Iowa Shop. And you can always follow the blog and for all of my musings, updates, and reflections at blackgirliowa.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, as always, keep telling your story and keep being unapologetically you.